if you look at the comment section, you can tell that there's not many people that are all that angry that Malik Monk is now a Los Angeles Laker, and they're in fact angry with me for even talking about Malik Monk because, yes, I love him so, but the only reason I do it because LeBron James mentioned the Charlotte Hornets. The best player in the NBA, maybe the greatest of all time, talked about how the Charlotte Hornets mismanaged Malik Monk, and LeBron talked about with Jason in his own words during Bailey, hey, is there any way we can steal Malik, get him on this team? And he's been playing pretty well out there. Certainly, even all season, but really the last 5 games, 6, 7, ever since he came back from COVID protocol. So I wasn't going to bring it up again, but we also didn't get a chance to hear Doug's thoughts on what LeBron had to say about Malik Monk and just his overall performance over there with the LA Lakers so far. So, Doug, I give the floor to you. What are your thoughts on this entire situation coming about?
LeBron's entitled to say whatever he wants to say, but just because he says it doesn't necessarily make it completely 100% accurate. I think the Hornets did their best to give Malik Monk opportunities to succeed, and he didn't always take those opportunities. And when I talked about Malik Monk on this show, I said he reminds me a lot of Jeremy Lamb before Jeremy Lamb came to Charlotte. Was a good player, had the potential to be a really good player, but needed a change of scenery. In Jeremy Lamb's case, that change of scenery happened to be in Charlotte. And I didn't hear anyone at the time in Charlotte saying, well, Jeremy Lamb was mismanaged. It was clearly Jeremy Lamb seizing an opportunity, or at least seeing that, hey, this could be the end of the road. Jeremy Lamb would mention that. He would say, I basically saw the end of my career in front of my eyes, and I had to figure things out. And honestly, I think that's what's happened with Malik Monk. He saw, hey, no other team was interested in me except the Los Angeles Lakers. Maybe I should finally realize that this might be my last opportunity to succeed in the NBA and take advantage of that. And I'm happy that Malik made that opportunity, but I think Hornets fans have to realize that the Hornets gave him every opportunity. And if other people don't see that, well, that's fine. That's context. People aren't paying attention. They'll see that LeBron James says something and take it as gospel. That's fine. I think people that watch this show, understand what the truth really is, which is that Malik needed that change of scenery to realize his potential. It wasn't going to happen in Charlotte.
Well, I mean, and look, I've already made my feelings known on Malik quite a bit, how I do think James Borrego should have played him more because I do think he was a good player that helped out this Hornets team. But also, I don't think that this is something that would have helped the Charlotte Hornets immensely this year, where we would have seen them now, 5 games above 500, rather than hovering a game, going below a little bit, sticking around that mark. And James Borrego, we've kind of seen him, be really short with players. We've seen it in starting lineups where Nick Richards will start, PJ Watt or Vernon Carey will start, and then he'll bring him back to the bench, and then PJ will actually get that nod after 5 minutes of James Borrego trying this experiment. We've seen this with a lot of different players, and James Borrego, a coach that is pretty heavily criticized here in Charlotte, Doug, and we'll transition to the evaluation of what he's done with Charlotte. With this team being 500 right now, essentially, right? I think they're a game above right now as they head into the weekend, going to play Milwaukee twice, once on Saturday, then once on Monday in the Spectrum Center. And here they are where, you've got a couple of guys in all-star contention. They've had to deal with COVID protocols, but they still come out to bad starts in the first quarter so frequently. And defensively, they're one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the NBA, but offensively, they're one of the best, if not the best team in the NBA. A lot of different things to try to evaluate with this team and with specifically James Borrego. How do you see the job that he's done this year?
Well, you say that he's heavily criticized in Charlotte. I would say that he's heavily criticized online. I think that's where most of the criticisms are coming. You don't hear criticisms or even whispers of criticisms from the organization. You really don't. You don't hear players criticizing the game plan. In fact, often they will say that the game plan was solid, and we didn't execute it, or we didn't have the right attitude, or anything like that. And I think it's fair to wonder, hey, maybe where does that attitude have to come from? Is it 100% something that has to come from the professionals that are being played or paid to play, or does some of that need to come from the leadership, from the top, from James Borrego? I think that's fair, but I would say a lot, Hornets fans in Spectrum Center weren't chanting "Fire Borrego."
No,
they were
weren't.
chanting "Fire Matt Rule." Okay, so I would say Matt Rule is heavily criticized in Charlotte. James Borrego heavily criticized online.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it goes hand in hand, and maybe heavily is too strong of a word. There's certainly visible criticism of James Borrego, and you don't have to look very hard for it. So heavily probably is a strong word to describe.
That's always going to come. That's always going to be a product of when a light gets shined on your franchise, which is what's happening now with LaMelo Ball. Now the light is pretty bright on Charlotte, and the clock is ticking. People are like, okay, let's go. I want to see LaMelo Ball in the playoffs. I want to see what this guy can do. And if anything is preventing that, they're not going to look at LaMelo Ball. They're going to look at all of the ancillary things, role players, other stars on the team, and that's going to include James Borrego as well. And I think the pressure should be on. I said at the beginning of the season, this was a winning record or bust opportunity for James Borrego. He hasn't had a winning season in Charlotte yet. He's had a one really bad performance in, I don't know if you technically want to call that the playoffs or the play-in, whatever you want to call it. They got blown out of the water. This team was once again not prepared for a big game, and I think a lot of that falls on players, but some of that ultimately has to fall on the coach. And I think this is a big second half of the season for Borrego. I don't know if it's necessarily make or break. He got the extension, but I think if this team underperforms with the schedule in their favor, if everyone stays physically healthy beyond the COVID stuff, because I think I put the COVID stuff in another basket because the rules are changing. It's so weird. But as long as everyone stays physically healthy from a muscle bone perspective, I think the pressure has to be on Borrego to get this team ready, get them in the playoffs with a winning record. I honestly think they need to be a 6 or higher for me to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I'm with you, Doug. I actually have the same exact expectations. I have no problem asking that goal from this Charlotte Hornets team.
Then I want to disagree and say now it's top 3. I want a top 3. I want to go one step more than you. Top 3 in the East.
If they're not holding up the LOB at the end of the season, then there is a huge problem with James Borrego, and he needs to be gone. My realistic expectations are totally what we agreed upon the first time. Top 6 seed, I think, is totally attainable, and I think it is even somewhat expected. If you win the play-in game and then get that top 6 spot, okay, like that's fine. You delivered in a big game. This is going to be a little bit of a gray area because of the play-in tournament. We could do a whole show on James Borrego, and we're trying to condense this in a couple of minutes because we want to move on to a different topic in the third segment. I think some of the things that James Borrego has done really well here in Charlotte are develop players at a high level, okay? I think some of that is shared responsibility with Mitch Kupchak, who we also give credit for drafting good enough pieces to be developed in the second round with some of the guys that we've talked about. So that's a shared responsibility and shared credit. But Borrego gets to share it too, right? Like he is involved in a lot of that, sending guys to Greensboro, bringing them back. I think he's a good player developer. I think he's really good at making adjustments. I think part of that is visible because they get off to such bad starts, which goes into negatives.
See, that's my problem, though, Walker. I don't know.
For sure.
I don't know if he's great at making adjustments because I haven't seen this team in a true playoff battle where you have to make those adjustments.
What we can fairly evaluate, like right now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs.
In the playoffs. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I want to see him in a 7-game situation where you're playing chess. I've only seen James Borrego play checkers, and I think he's pretty good at playing checkers. What my question has always been, is he good at playing chess? Did he inherit that from is he truly one of the branches from the Popovich tree? Did he inherit that from Popovich, or is he just great at playing checkers? It's a lot of analogies that I just threw out there, but I'm just saying that's what I want to see.
Well, Mike Budenholzer was criticized for not playing chess, and he's a part of the Pop tree, and so here we are with James Borrego. Like, we don't know. Let me evaluate his checkers game.
So is LaMelo Ball, like Giannis, somebody who's great enough to lift I think Budenholzer's a mediocre coach. That's fine.
Oh, in the
I'll say it.
postseason for sure. No, I
Yeah.
completely agree. Let me then just entertain me for a second and let me evaluate his checkers game. I don't have to talk about his chess game. I'm just going to evaluate his checkers game. I think he is good at making adjustments. I think that's one of the things that allow them to get back in ball games. We've seen them win a lot of clutch games over the last even couple of years. I do think those are points for James Borrego. I think things against him, those bad starts, like that has to come from something, and that falls on the head coach. And what gives? I mean, it can't be a persisting problem when this is at least an average team, as their record says. I think the lineup thing is really weird when he plays these guys for 5 minutes and then yanks them and puts somebody else in. Look, and I know this has become a joke for people to complain about their favorite team's rotation. I'll raise my hand high. Like, I have no problem being the butt of the joke on this. My biggest problem with James Borrego has always been taking away minutes from guys that I think should be out there on the court and giving them to players I don't think should be on the court.
My biggest issue with the coach is that he won't do what I want him to do.
Well, that's exactly. I mean, you want him to make the playoffs, right? Like that's how.
But that's what everybody
that's
wants.
all evaluation
I want him to do what everybody wants him to do, what everybody should expect him to do, which is to get this team into the playoffs and win a play-in game against the Indiana Pacers.
So that's Doug Branson, because I am saying this is the opinion. Everybody should have this opinion. My opinions are my own, but immediately should be adopted by you. And so I'm with you. Like I agree with you on that. I think. Like a McDaniels, it took him a while to play him. You know, I've already shared my thoughts on Malik. I understand that's mine, but this is also my opinion on James Borrego. We've talked about some of these guys that aren't playing enough. And I'll tell you, like all the people that want LaMelo to play more minutes, I don't think that's completely off base. Like, I think everybody gets too crazy when they're saying he's not playing LaMelo enough. Like, but if we look at how he managed him in his rookie season, we got to a point for me, Doug, where I thought it's time to let loose LaMelo and let him, entertain us, please. And we didn't get to so much of a problem where I was ready for like, all right, JB, it's a real problem now. I've run out of patience. Like I still had it a little bit, but we certainly got to that point where I think he waited a little too long to play LaMelo. And so, yeah, I think there are the rotation problems. Those have always been my biggest problems with JB.
Yeah. I mean, I think LaMelo should play a little bit more too. I don't want to see him like Tibbs the guy.
No, for sure.
I wonder if the wrist injury changed any calculations going into this season. I think I think we've seen Borrego shorten up the rotations. He's not afraid to do that. If the Hornets make a playoff series, not just a play-in game, I think you're going to see LaMelo Ball get significant minutes. And down the stretch, too, I think if they are really battling out for seeding, I think you're going to see some, 38, 39, 40-minute LaMelo Ball games for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand trying to rest him. LaMelo's young, man. Let him loose. Let him play. All right. We'll transition into Kelly Oubre conversation. We talked about him a little bit, of course, with the big-time Detroit Pistons game that he had, hitting 8 3-pointers in the fourth quarter, 9 total. I kind of want to talk about his morale with this organization and how it's changed compared to a Golden State that he played with previously. Let's talk about Built Bar first, though, because it's the new year, and so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and maybe even better than a candy bar. They're all covered in 100% chocolate. They are high in protein, they're high in fiber, but they're low in calories and they're low in sugar. So go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Again, Built.com, LOCKED15 for 15% off of your order, and you can enjoy those delicious treats of those Built Bars. We'll talk about Kelly Oubre coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.